Okay. Thank you very much for joining me tonight for the learning of Parashat HaShavua, Parashat Chaye Sarah. Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to dedicate tonight's shiur for the Refuah Shlema of Kol Cholei Yisrael, especially those that were injured in the terror attacks. And we're going to learn for the complete retrieval of all those taken captive, all those that were kidnapped by the terrorists, Yimach Shemam V'Zichram. And we would like to learn the Ilu Nishmat, all those who were killed by the terrorists, Yimach Shemam V'Zichram. Before we begin Parashat Chaye Sarah, I just wanted to share with you something interesting that I saw at the end of Parashat Vayera. As you know, at the end of Parashat Vayera, we have the story of Akedat Yitzchak. And the story of Akedat Yitzchak opens up in a very interesting way. It starts off saying, Vayhi achar had-devarim ha'ele. So that literally means that it was after these words, after these things. Dvarim could be words, it could be things. Now, the simple understanding of this is we just had a whole discussion about how Avimelech took Sarah, and when he took Sarah, he had a dream that Hashem is talking to him, and that Sarah is married, and he gave Sarah back to Abraham, and it was a whole big ordeal. And then, Vayhi achar devarim ha'ele, after these words, at that point, Hashem tested Abraham with the famous test of slaughtering Yitzchak, which Abraham was very willing and ready and able and happy to do for Hashem, which is an amazing thing, obviously. Now, over here, Rashi tells us that that's not exactly what is going on. Rashi tells us that achara devarim ha'ele specifically means words. Some of our rabbis, Rashi informs us, teach that the words of the Satan are what are being mentioned here, that the Satan was mekatreg. The Satan said to Hashem a very heavy leveled accusations against Abraham. He said, Mikol suda she'asa Abraham lo yikriv lefanecha par echad v'ayil echad. He says, from all the meals that Abraham made before you, he never offered up even one bull or one ram. Amar lo klum asa ela bishvil beno. He says, so Hashem said, what do you mean? He says, even if I would tell him, even if I would tell Avraham, slaughter your son for me, he wouldn't withhold himself from doing that. So therefore, at that point, Hashem indeed asked him to do that, and to prove the point to the Satan that he would do that for him. So achar devarim ha'ele, according to Rashi, means after the words of the Satan that he said that Abraham has not offered anything to you, Hashem says, what do you mean? Even if I asked Abraham to slaughter his own son, he would do it. And to prove the point, Hashem asked him to do that. Now, if you look in Targum Yonatan ben Uziel, I saw a very interesting explanation, a little bit different than Rashi. And he says the following. Vahava batar pitgamaya ha'ilen. And it was after these words. Now, what words are we talking about? Batar pitgamaya ha'ilen means what? Says the Targum Yonatan ben Uziel, very interesting. Vehava batar pitgamaya ha'ilen, after these words. Min dinso Yitzchak ve'Yishmael. There was an argument, a fight between Yitzchak and Ishmael. What was the fight? He says, Ishmael hava amar licha milemerut yat Abba. Ishmael says, it is befitting for me to inherit our father Abraham, da'ana berei buchre, because I am his firstborn son. And Yitzchak said, hava amar licha milemerut yat Abba. It is more preferable for me to inherit my father. Da'ana bar Sarah intete. I am the son of Sarah, his wife. Ve'ant bar Hagar amta de'imi. You, on the other hand, are the son of Hagar, who is the maidservant of my mom. So I am the one who is really the son of his actual wife. Now look what he says back. Ishmael responds and says, Ana zakaya terminach. He says, I am more worthy than you. I have more zechut than you. I have more merit than you. Why? Because I had my circumcision at 13 years old. He says, I could have held myself back from doing the brit, but I didn't. I understood that this is what I have to do, and I gave myself over to that mitzvah. The aunt, he says, but you, Yitzchak, on the other hand, you had a circumcision, bar temanya yomin, 8 days old. Ilu hababach mandea, if you would have had understanding, wisdom, dilma, meaning if you would be an adult, dilma lahaveta misar nafshach titgezarat, maybe you would not have given over yourself to do the brit. Mati Yitzchak v'amar, so Yitzchak responded and said, Ha-ana yomana bar telatin v'shav shenin. He says, listen to me carefully. I am today 36 years old. If Hashem, the Holy One, blessed be He, would ask me for every body part of my body, I would not withhold myself. I would do it, even if Hashem asked me for every body part. Says the Targum Yonatan, min yad ishtemau pitga mina ilein kodam mari alma. Immediately, the words of Yitzchak were heard by the Master of the universe. Umin yad memrad Adonai naseyat Avraham. And immediately Hashem started speaking to Abraham, and He told Abraham, v'amar le'Avraham v'amar hineni. And that's when Abraham responded and said, here I am. In other words, ha'ana, right? In other words, at this moment, this is the point at which it has become clear that Yitzchak is saying, I would be much greater than you. You did a circumcision at 13. You're challenging me and saying that I wouldn't give myself over for circumcision. I'm 36 years old right now, he says. And at this moment, I would be willing to give my entire body for Hashem. Immediately, because of achar hadevarim ha'ele, after these words, at this moment comes Hashem and tests Avraham and says, Avraham, I want you to bring Yitzchak as an offering. In other words, according to the Targum Yonatan, it was actually the words of Yitzchak that caused the test from Hashem onto Avraham. And it's no less of a test for Yitzchak. If Yitzchak is 36, which according to many is actually 37, it's interesting the Targum says he's 36. Maybe it happened a little bit later than this conversation. But the point being that Yitzchak was the one who brought it, so to say, on himself, which is a unique take on these three words. Vahi achar hadevarim ha'ele. So one thing that I think we can take from here is we always have to remember the words that come out of our mouths are so super precious to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and He listens to the words that we say, even if it's in casual conversation. Here, this is a, so to say, a fight between brothers, and they have this talk between themselves, and Hashem is listening very carefully to the words that Yitzchak says. Hashem pays careful attention to them, and says, "Oh, Yitzchak, yeah, that's what you would do. So then, let me see it in action." That's an important lesson for us to take from here, that we shouldn't just say things. We shouldn't just say it, because, be careful what you say, because it could very well be that at that moment Hashem is listening. Obviously, Hashem listens to everything always, but Hashem is deciding based on the words that come out of your mouth, which is a heavy responsibility upon all of us. Another point that I think we can see from this exchange from Yitzchak and Ishmael is that Ishmael, although he was somebody that Chazal say, when Chazal talk about him being metzachek, and he was doing idolatry. Metzachek means laughing, but it refers to averot. They bring down that it means idolatry and it means forbidden relations. It means killing. So here's a person that really has problems at this point in his life. He really does. And for those problems, Sarai Menu says he cannot inherit with my son, with Yitzchak. He has to move out. And Avraham isn't happy. But the point is that even he realizes that in order to inherit the name and the legacy of Avraham, you need merit, you need zechut. In order to overpower your brother Yitzchak, you need merit, you need zechut, you need spiritual power. And over here, he starts off with the argument saying, look, I'm the firstborn. Yitzchak says, yeah, but you're the firstborn of a maidservant. And then Yitzchak says, and then Ishmael says, well, Ana zakai yater minach. I have more merit than you. Because the bottom line is that I gave myself over to Brit Milah at 13 years old, and it wasn't easy. And you had it at 8 days old, and you didn't have any knowledge, any understanding, and the pain is long gone from your memory, and you'd get really not much zechut for doing what you did. But I get a lot of zechut for doing what I did. Oh, so now Yishmael has a real argument. And he says, excuse me, but I have more zechut than you. You haven't given yourself over. You haven't done Mesirut Nefesh like I have done, Yitzchak. And therefore, I am the one that is worthy of continuing the legacy of Abraham. To which Yitzchak says, well, I hear that. I hear your point. But I've got news for you. I would give up my entire body for Hashem. Much more than just the reproductive organ. I'd give up everything for Hashem. At this point, it turns out that Hashem wanted to see that in action. It could very well be that Yitzchak's Mesirut Nefesh, his willingness to give over his entire body to Hashem, is indeed what got us to have more zechut than Ishmael, to have more merit than Ishmael. That's a very important point. It's a reminder to us that the power of Ishmael is actually a spiritual one. Ishmael is coming to us with the fact that he indeed did do a tremendous act in order to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He circumcised his body, and he came closer to Hashem that way, and he came closer to Avraham that way, and he did it willingly, knowing that it would cause him pain, but he said it's worth it, and that gave him a tremendous zechut. And he also has the zechut of crying, like we learned when he would cry out, when he cried out to Hashem because of his pain and suffering. And from there, Chazal say that it's more powerful when the one who is sick prays for himself, because here you have his mom who was a prophetess, and she is somebody who speaks to angels, and her deeds were as pleasant to Hashem as Ketoret, as it says in Rashi later on. When Avraham remarried her, she didn't marry anybody else in the meanwhile, out of the hope that Avraham would eventually remarry her. And Ishmael was answered, and she was not answered. Why was Ishmael answered? Because he prayed from the depths of his heart for himself, and Hashem heard his tefillot. So you see something very unique about Ishmael. He has the power of tefillah. He has the power of Mesirut Nefesh, of giving over himself for the cause. And that is something that we have to be very cognizant of, because like Rabbi Franz said so many years ago beautifully in his tshuva drasha in after 9/11, I was there in the Young Israel of Flatbush, and he got up and said that really is the battle. That is the battle that we have with Ishmael. Who's going to daven harder? Who's going to be more moser nefesh for Hashem? That is really what it boils down to. And that's the battle. It's summed up so beautifully in this Targum Yonatan in last week's parasha. But I thought it was important to go through that, to share that with you, because it's a reminder of how we have to, like it says, Ozer Yisrael b'gvura, strength, and girdle ourselves with strength. Hashem helps us to become strong, but spiritual strong. in our Torah, in our mitzvot, in our Avodat Hashem. That's something I think which we really can see over here. It's a spiritual battle. It's important for us to be aware of that. Okay. Now I think we can move on to the parasha. I wanted to share that with you. I thought it was very important. Okay. Now, Avraham Avinu loses Sarah Imenu, and Sarah dies. Rashi tells us that the Satan came to her and told her, right, that that he was almost slaughtered when the Satan came and told her those words. Her soul departed her and she died. Now Avraham Avinu now has his wife who passed away at age 127, and he has a mitzvah to go and to bury her. And now he knows where he wants to bury her. He already has become familiar since Parashat Vayera with the Me'arat Machpelah. He knows that there are smells of Gan Eden that come out from there. He knows exactly where he wants to bury Sarah. And now he has to deal with Ephron. Now, the people, the Bnei Chet, are incredibly gracious to him. And they make a statement. They say, Shema'enu Adoni Nesi Elohim ata betochenu. Listen to us, our master. You are a prince of God in our midst. B'mivchar kvarenu kvoret metecha. The best of our plots you can take and bury your deceased. Ish mimenu et kivro. None of us will withhold, will prevent you from using their plot to bury the dead. Now, Avraham says, look, I don't want a gift. I would rather buy it. I'm looking for somebody named Ephron ben Tzochar. Right? I want to talk to Ephron, the son of Tzochar. He should give me the Me'arat Machpelah, which is this cave where, which is kind of like a double cave, where he doesn't tell them what's there, which is Adam and Chava are buried there. He says, I want that cave. Asher b'ktzeh sadeu, it's at the end of his field. The kesef maleit nenali, I want him to give me the whole thing for a full price. Betochechem la'achuzat kaver, amongst you for the burial of my wife. Now, here's what I want to focus on. Ve'Ephron yoshev betoch b'nei Chet. So it says Ephron was sitting amongst the Bnei Chet, and he's listening to the whole thing. So now Ephron gets up, and he starts to respond to Avraham, and he tells him, listen, don't worry about it, take it, I'm giving it to you. Avraham is so happy, he bows down, and then he says, listen, I don't want to take it as a gift, I want to buy it from you. And he says, listen, a land that's worth 400 shekel kesef between me and you, what is it? Just take it. And Avraham says, oh, it's worth 400, I'm giving you 400, and that's how the story ends. 400 in a currency that's accepted everywhere, and that's how Avraham acquires Me'arat Machpelah. But there's one word I want to zone in on this time. Ve'Ephron yoshev betoch b'nei Chet. Ephron was sitting amongst b'nei Chet. Now, the word yoshev, Rashi points out, is written without a vav. It's written without a vav. It's yud Shin Bet. Usually Yoshev is going to be written Yud Vav Shin Bet, but here it's written Yud Shin Bet. The question is why. So Rashi says something interesting. Ve'Ephron Yoshev Ketiv Chaser. It is written Chaser, meaning without the Vav. Now why is that? Oto hayom minuhu shoter alehem. That very day, they appointed Ephron as an officer over them. Mipnei chashivuto shel Avraham. This is because of the importance of Avraham. Shaya tzarich lo, because Avraham needed Ephron, ala ligdula. That's why he rose to greatness. So here we have a very interesting Rashi. What does this have to do with the fact that it says Yoshev without a vav? So the Siftei Chachamim explains that Yoshev with a vav is obviously the word presently sitting. Yoshev, he is sitting. If you remove the vav, so that you could read it as Yashav, which means sat in the past tense. So over here, the reason that the Torah is telling us sat in the past tense, meaning without the vav, that's how you would read it without the vowels. So why does the Torah do that? The Torah does that to tell you that it used to be that Abraham sat with the Bnei Chet. Abraham used to sit with them like a regular guy. It used to be. He sat. He used to sit with Bnei Chet like a regular, ordinary guy. But no longer does he do that. You know why? Because at this point, he's considered to be a very important person. And he is now the officer, I guess the commanding officer, or we could call it maybe more like a governor of the Bnei Chet, of the people of Chet. Why is he the governor of Bnei Chet? Because Avraham needed him. So that's why he rose to greatness. Those are the words of Rashi. Now, in the Rashi is quoting a Midrash. I'll read to you the words of the Midrash. The Midrash says the following. The Midrash says, "De lo yehe barnash rav zaben mi barnash ze'er." That shouldn't be that a great man, in other words, Avraham, zabin, which means purchasing, that he shouldn't purchase mi barnash ze'er from a small man. So he has to purchase from a big man, from a great man. It's not proper for a great man to buy from a small man. I will tell you, there are two ways that I'll be honest with you. The first way that I always learned over here is that what this Rashi means. If you asked me how to read this Rashi, I would say the following: V'Efron Yoshe, V'Efron was sitting. Ktiv Chaser, it doesn't have a vav. Oto hayom minuhu shoter alehem. That day, they appointed him as an officer over them. Mipnei chashivuto shel Avraham, because Avraham was so special. Shayat tzarich lo, and since Avraham needed him, ala ligdula, he came to power. I thought that what this meant is that the people saw Avraham needed Ephron. So being that Avraham was such an important person in the world, the fact that Avraham needed Ephron was a reason for the people to say, wow, if Avraham needs you, it must be that you are special too, and therefore we will now make you into the leader of our people. In other words, it was intentionally done due to the fact that they were aware that Avraham needed him. That's the first way that I always used to learn. The problem that I have with learning like that now is why would they intentionally elevate him to governor just so that Avraham Avinu could buy something? Why would they do that? That's an interesting thing to do. That you're gonna elevate Avraham to governor just so that you're gonna elevate Ephron to being the governor just so that Avraham Avinu should be able to purchase from him. That should be respect to Avraham. Let's take it a step further. If they knew that Avraham was looking for Ephron's land, so then why the shmuz in the beginning? Why did they have to stand up and say, Avraham, nobody's going to withhold their grave from you. If any of us have a plot, we will gladly give it to you. Question: why are you talking about like a big, anybody in our country will give you his burial plot? Why don't you just say, Avraham, we know you want Ephron's land. It's yours. Take it. Why do they have to go through this whole thing? Right? In other words, the only reason that we have this question is because the assumption, the way that I learned this Rashi is that Rashi is telling us that because before the conversation with Avraham even started, they became aware that Avraham is going to be asking Ephron for his burial plot, Me'arat HaMachpelah, and due to that awareness, they subsequently made Ephron the governor of the Bnei Chet. So therefore, right, they were aware, they made him a governor, and now I'm stuck with this problem, which is, well, if that's what you are aware of, you know that he's coming to ask for that land, why the theatrics? Just say, okay, Avraham, we know what you want, here you are. None of us, right? Forget about none of us will withhold our our plot from you. Just say, here's Ephron. You want him, right? Here he is. Come and get it. And as a matter of fact, just because you are who you are, we elevated him because you need him, and we made him the governor. Why is that not how things went down? Why did they have this whole back and forth in the beginning? So there's another way of learning this Rashi. And this Rashi, it could be learned the following way. Perhaps what this Rashi means is not that the people were aware that Avraham is going to need Ephron's land, but perhaps what it means is that Hashem elevated Ephron to be governor out of respect to Avraham. Now, this is an interesting thought. In other words, what happened that day was there were elections. Let's imagine, for argument's sake, there were elections. And Ephron was nominated to be the leader of Bnei Chet. And at that point, the people voted for Ephron. Now, they think they're voting for Ephron because they like his foreign policy. They think they're voting for Ephron because they like his tax reductions, right? That's what they're thinking. But what's really going on is that Ephron is being chosen because Avraham is going to need him. And it is inappropriate for somebody of such stature like Avraham to need something from a regular Joe Schmo or regular, right, Ephron. It's just not proper. If Avraham is going to need something, he's going to need something big from somebody big. And for that reason, HaKadosh Baruch Hu organized that the people should elect Ephron to be their leader for the purposes of matching him up with Avraham, so that when Avraham needs something, he's not getting it from an ordinary guy, he's getting it from a king. This is a very interesting take on it. Now, the question that I would have, and that would answer the question, of course, why was there a give and take with Avraham and the people? The answer is because they didn't know that Avraham needs Ephron's plot, right? So they said, Avraham, of course, anything. We'll give you, anybody here will give you their plot of land, no question. So Avraham has to inform them, look, I'm not just looking for any plot. I need Ephron's plot. Oh, you need Ephron's plot. Now we're talking. You need the head honcho, the guy that we just elected, his plot. Okay, now let's see where this goes, right? So Ephron has to stand up and address the situation as their leader. In other words, it was not coordinated. It was not planned. They didn't know. According to this way of learning Rashi, it was that they happened to have elected him. They happened to have appointed him as their leader in order so that when Avraham needs something, it should be from him who is their leader. Okay. That seems to be another option of how to learn. So the problem now becomes a different problem. Well, in that case, the question is going to be, Avraham Avinu right now, Hashem, is suffering. He has a wife that was his companion, that was by his side for years. They went through so much together. They went through the fact that they didn't have children until she was 90 and he was 100. And now she was 127, and Yitzchak had just become this Olat Mima, and it's 37 years later, and she passes away. Avraham just lost his lifelong partner. Lifelong partner. It's devastating. It's so painful to imagine the pain Avraham was going through. It's unbelievable. And the question becomes, do you think it really made a difference to Avraham whether the owner of the plot he was trying to buy was a very important man or not such an important man? Do you really think it makes a difference to him at this point in his life? It doesn't really matter. He needs to bury his wife, his lifelong partner. The more the process is longer, the longer the process, the more pain he's suffering, the more pain he's enduring. It's not easy to do what he's doing right now, to keep your composure. You have a lifetime partner here that needs to get married. Now you have to deal with all of this, right? With this back and forth. He's not interested. And I guarantee you he could care less who was the owner. He just needed to get Me'arat Machpelah regardless of who owned it, whether it was a very important minister or whether it was a Joe Schmo. It's irrelevant. He needs to buy the land and then he has to get it. Very important point. So I saw a beautiful discussion about this from Rabbi Yisachar Friend. And he gives over the following very important explanation. He says that tzaddikim, the way of tzaddikim is they always look to see hashgacha in everything. They always look to see the divine providence of Hashem in every little thing that happens in their life. In other words, it's not just hashgacha pratit. I mean, there's so many beautiful stories. I remember one time I was with my Rosh Hashiva, Baruch Weisbecker, may he live and be well, Shiva Bet Matityahu. I was in the American Embassy in Tel Aviv with him, and he had a conversation with one of the people that was working there. And he was telling them, yes, one time we were driving home somewhere and somebody asked for a ride. And I said, sure, I'll give you a ride. We gave that fellow a ride, and he said, who did who a favor? And he said, you did that guy a favor. He said, correct, right? And as we're on the way home, we get a phone call that one of the kids got a heavy burn on the body, or one of the grandkids got a heavy burn. And it just so happens to be that the guy that we were taking home is a doctor. And he said, let's rush back to the house. We'll see what's going on. So who did who the favor? He did us a favor, right? The point is that was beautiful hashgacha, very good. That I thought I was doing this guy a favor, taking him back to wherever he needed to go. Little did I know that I was doing myself the greatest favor, because there was a doctor who was able to treat my child or my grandchild that needed the help. So a beautiful hashgacha pratit. So we see the hashgacha, we see how Hashem orchestrates certain things and makes it perfect. But nobody says usually, that mosquito bite that I got on my arm, I have this big bump over there now. Hashgacha pratit. Wow, that was really, really special. That was divine orchestration. People don't think of things like that way. But the truth of the matter is that everything is hashgacha pratit. Everything is divine orchestrations that we don't know exactly why they are good for us, but we know that Hashem is in charge of everything and orchestrating everything. So tzaddikim that always look to see the hashgacha in every scenario, those tzaddikim, even when they might not see the hashgacha in a certain scenario, even when they are, so to say, turned off in terms of thinking about a situation as far as its hashgacha can be perceived, for whatever the reason may be, like let's say they're involved in something right now and they're trying to accomplish something. They're not thinking about these things at the moment. They're busy with other things, like Avraham Avinu in this case, who's trying to bury Sarah Imenu. So while they are involved in whatever they're preoccupied in, Hashem still causes the hashgacha to happen. Hashem activates the hashgacha, because this tzaddik always looks for it in his life. When he looks back in retrospect and says, wow, this was hashgacha, that's hashgacha, everything's hashgacha. So Hashem activates the hashgacha even when he's not thinking about it. So in this particular case over here, Hashem caused Ephron to be elevated to this high level, even though Avraham is not thinking about it, not caring about it either. But since Avraham is somebody who's always activating his hashgacha glasses to try and see hashgacha even in that small mosquito bite, so Hashem causes the hashgacha to work for him even when he's not thinking about it. So therefore Hashem elevates Ephron to that high level, in order that when Avraham needs him, he's not getting it from a nobody, but rather from the leader of the people. Now again, we have to ask ourselves, well then what's the purpose of that? Okay, good, so Hashem made that happen. But why is that important? Why does that make a difference? So I wanted to suggest an answer based on another question. This question was asked by my Rebbe, Rav Belsky, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, who asked the question about a different case. It was a question about Yosef HaTzadik. Later on, Be'ezad Hashem Parashat Vayeshev, we're going to learn that Yosef HaTzadik was betrayed by his brothers. He was taken, was kidnapped, sold into slavery, and taken down to Egypt. And it was a devastating thing for him, for the whole Klal Yisrael. And when he was taken down, so it says in Perek Lamed Zayin Pasuk Chafei, that the people that purchased him, that were going down to Egypt, whether it was the Ishmaelim or Midyanim, however you want to learn, different ways of explaining it, Gmalehem noseim nechot utzri valot. Their camels were carrying nechot, which means nice smelling perfumes. Utzri valot, all beautiful smelling perfumes. And it says that in Rashi over there that usually the Ishmaelim, they carry neft and itran. They carry very foul smelling things like kerosene. It stinks, or oil. It doesn't have a good smell. And that's what usually would have been. So over here, it was the opposite. It was very beautiful smelling things, fine smelling things, in order that tzaddik, shelo yuzak mereach ra, he shouldn't get, so to say, shouldn't get hurt from the bad smell. And I remember Avdalsky Zatzal asked the following question. He said, here's Yosef. He's betrayed by his brothers. He's kidnapped. He's sold as a slave. You think he cares about the nice smelling cargo over here? You think he cares about the merchandise over here? Does it make any difference whatsoever to the fact that he was betrayed by his own brothers? They almost killed him. And instead, he was sold as a slave, which is terrible. His fate, he has no idea what's going up ahead of him. He doesn't know what he's up against. His life seemingly is ruined. And he was close to his father, and he loved his father, and he also had good feelings towards his brother. He said certain things about them. He gave bad reports about them. But the bottom line is, he even loved his own brothers. So then, to see this all happening, do you think it makes any difference to him that he's got some nice smelling perfume on the way down? So that's a beautiful question that he asked. And I think it's important to understand that people find themselves in life with a lot of regrets. They find themselves down the road saying, if I just would have done this and that differently, if I just would have kept my mouth shut, if I just wouldn't have said this, or if I just wouldn't have done that, or if I would have done this, and if I would have, and you have all these regrets in your mind. And you say to yourself, the situation that I'm in right now could have been avoided. It could have been prevented. I think, Rabotai, over here we have a very important lesson, which is Hashem is reminding Yosef, you don't understand. This is my divine orchestration. This is my plan from the beginning. This whole situation is because I desired it to come about. It's not what you should not have said, Yosef. Yes, you gave bad reports about your brothers. And yes, you did certain things that were an issue, etc., etc. Correct. But the reason that you're in the situation that you're in right now is because I put you in that situation, Hashem says. Right? As the song goes, even behind all those difficult challenges that are in front of you, I am there. I'm the one who's giving them to you. I'm the one putting you there. So it's not true to say, I could have done this, I should have done that. No, you needed to be in this situation right now because I am putting you there. And the way that Hashem is reminding Yosef of that point, that everything that he's going through right now is through divine orchestration, is through the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is that reminder that Yosef, these guys, they usually carry kerosene and foul-smelling things. How come you have perfume now? Do you know why you have perfume? You've got perfume because Hashem is reminding you that you're not alone. You're not being thrown to the wolves. You right now have HaKadosh Baruch Hu with you as you're going, because the whole thing to begin with is by design, specifically for you, by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I think that answer could be applied here as well. Avraham Avinu is in a situation, again, a challenging situation. He wants to bury his wife. his lifetime partner. And the Satan came to Sarah and he scared her so much that she dropped dead. And I can imagine the thoughts that are running through Avram's mind. Perhaps, maybe this is what's going on. That Avram might have certain regrets. Maybe I should have told her. Maybe I should have informed her. Maybe I should have done this. Maybe I would have Sarah with me right now had I not done X, Y, and Z. Perhaps that's what's going through his mind. And Hashem says to Avram, listen, who are you buying this plot from right now? You're buying this plot from a Joshmo, or are you buying this plot from the head of the entire Bnei Chet, who was just appointed today because you are the one who's going to buy it from him? Right? This is a little smile from above saying, Hashem is saying, Avram, I'm the one organizing all of this. I'm the one orchestrating all of this. I'm the one who caused all of this to happen. It's not something that you could have prevented. This is what I wanted. This is it. No regrets, no doubts. No doubts about where these things came from. It's all from me, Hashem says. And this is a reminder. I think that's a point that we all need to understand. In life, there are so many times where we could look back and say, I messed up, I did this, I did that, etc. And because I did this and that, I went through this and that, and all of these different struggles that I had to deal with because of my great mistakes. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sometimes sends us little smiles from above and reminds us, no. Yes, of course, everybody has to work on themselves. Everybody has to do things to improve themselves and become better and not let themselves fail and not let themselves slip, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, every single thing that the person goes through is custom designed for him to go through that situation, that scenario. And there's nothing that he could have done to prevent that. That's the key, to understand that he had to go through that for whatever reason Hashem deemed necessary for him to go through that. He had to. And it's our job to look for the Hashgacha and to say, wow, Hashem, even in these situations, I could see that you were there. You were smiling at me. You were telling me that, no, you need to go through this for whatever the reason may be. And it came up in this way and in that way, etc. You can always find the Hashgacha if you look for it. And that's the job, that's the way of the tzaddikim. And like my friend brings down, I forgot from who, the more the person looks for the hashgacha, the more Hashem is mashgiach over him and takes care of him and watches out for him and helps him and blesses him. Because the more you look for it, the more you look for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in your life, the more Hashem wants to be in your life and wants to show you that he's in your life. That, Abotai, I think is a very important lesson that we could take from here. So again, V'Avraham, Yoshev, that one missing, look at what we came out from, one missing Vav. Instead of saying Yoshev with a Vav, it says it without a Vav because Yashav means that Ephron used to sit like a normal guy amongst the people, but no longer does he do that because he was appointed leader of the Bnei Chet. So I think this is a very interesting chidush. Again, it's a change from the way I used to learn this Rashi. This Rashi was a Rashi that used to mean to me that the people knew Avraham was coming, and therefore they elevated Ephron because since Avraham needs you, you're a special guy. But according to this other way of learning, that's not really what's happening here. It's not that they were aware that Avraham is coming for Ephron's plot. It's that they happened to have that very day selected Ephron to be the leader of Bnei Chet, and they thought that that's because they like his foreign policy. But really it was because Hashem is orchestrating it that Avraham should not have to buy from somebody that is a simpleton. It's interesting to note that there are different times where we find that kings would buy things from simpletons. It's an interesting thing to think about. For example, King Achav wanted to purchase something from Navot, which was, as far as I know, a simple person. So it's interesting to ask ourselves, is it really that uncommon for a king to purchase something from a simple person? some food for thought. Okay, Rabotai, thanks for joining me, and I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. B'atzlacha.